In 2008, robbery convict Renee Lima Marin was accidentally released from prison 90 years early. Following the accidental release, he got a job, got married, and had kids. He also coached youth soccer and was very active in his local church. But when authorities noticed the errors 6 years later, they sent him back to prison to serve out the rest of his sentence. In the 1950s, there was a serial killer in Thailand who was so feared by the people that he was publicly executed. Afterwards, he was put on display in a glass box so that everyone could see that he was really dead. You can still publicly view his body today. A man in Washington state found a caterpillar that looks like it has the image of a human face on its back. The internet is pretty sure it was the reincarnation of Edgar Allan Poe. Otters in the Amazon are apex predators that can grow up to 6 feet long. They have been known to prey on small anacondas and caimans when fish are unavailable. The giant groundsel is a prehistoric plant that is only found on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. For years, scientists didn't know what created various massive cave networks in South America. In 2010, they learned that the caves were actually tunnels dug by ancient giant ground sloths. 17-year-old Tyler Hadley murdered his parents for being too strict. He beat both of them to death with a hammer and then spent 3 hours cleaning up the crime scene. He then threw a house party with 60 people while the bodies were still in the bedroom. He even showed the bodies to a few friends, but was eventually caught due to word of mouth at the party. A 70-year-old man robbed a bank in Kansas City and then sat down in the lobby and waited for the cops to arrive. He said he'd rather live in jail than with his wife. In 1993, a Missouri man damaged a levee on the Mississippi River simply to delay his wife from coming home so that he could party. Instead, the river ended up flooding over 14,000 acres. The 23-year-old man was convicted for intentionally causing a catastrophe and was sentenced to life imprisonment. A 43-year-old man named Jason Vukovic, who was sexually assaulted as a boy, used an online sex offenders registry to track down pedophiles and beat them with a hammer. He was sentenced to 23 years in prison for multiple first-degree assault charges. Japanese death row inmates are not told the date of their execution. They wake up each day wondering if today might be their last. The 1902 St. Pierre volcanic eruption killed all 35,000 people in the nearby town except for one man. He only survived because he was the worst prisoner in town and lived deep in a solitary confinement cell. In 1941, a Polish soldier named Witold Pilecki volunteered to be placed in a concentration camp to prove to the Allies that the Holocaust was real. While a prisoner at Auschwitz, he organized resistance movements and eventually escaped after 3 years of imprisonment. Until he escaped, little had been known by the rest of the world about how the Germans ran the camps, as they were thought to be internment camps or large prisons rather than death camps. In 1958, the U.S. Air Force lost a 7,600-pound hydrogen bomb in Savannah, Georgia. It remains unfound somewhere in the Wassaw Sound to this day. At his luxurious estate in Puerto Triunfo, Pablo Escobar put together a private zoo filled with giraffes, hippos, elephants, and other animals. Some of the animals, left abandoned upon Escobar's death, have since thrived and reproduced. It is now estimated that more than 60 hippos roam the surrounding areas, and have even become a local invasive species problem. When anglerfish mate, they melt into each other and share their bodies forever. The deep sea is so vast that when a male finds a female, he must latch on and fuse to her, losing his eyes and internal organs until the two fish share a bloodstream. One of serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer's victims nearly escaped his gruesome fate. In 1991, a 14-year-old boy named Konorak ran naked into the street, heavily drugged and covered in blood. In his brain-injured state, Konorak struggled to explain his situation when authorities arrived. Dahmer eventually found the boy with the police and convinced them that the boy was his 19-year-old lover. Despite bystanders pleading for his life, the officers returned the boy to Dahmer's apartment. They noticed a strange smell in the apartment, which was the decaying corpse of a previous victim in the bedroom, but made no attempts to investigate. Later that evening, Dahmer sexually abused, killed, and dismembered the boy. The loudest sound ever heard on Earth was the eruption of Krakatoa in 1883. The explosion had a nuclear yield 13,000 times greater than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. It ruptured the eardrums of sailors 40 miles away, and people as far as 3,000 miles away reported hearing it as a distant roar of heavy guns. To put that into perspective, it would be like sitting in Boston and hearing a sound that came all the way from Ireland. It was one of the most destructive volcanic eruptions in history, since at least 35,000 people died and the global temperature was lowered by 2 degrees Fahrenheit for 5 years. A former intern at NASA named Thad Roberts stole $20 million worth of moon rocks to have sex on them with his girlfriend. He was only caught when he tried to sell them online to undercover FBI agents. He served 6 years in a federal prison for the crime. This is a photo of John Lennon signing an autograph for Mark David Chapman, the man who would kill him 5 hours later. 25 years following the unsolved murder of Nicole Van Den Herk, her stepbrother falsely confessed to killing her. He did this so that her body would be exhumed for DNA testing, which led to the arrest and prosecution of her true killer. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the US government issued Mickey Mouse gas masks in case of a chemical attack. The incentive was to make them appear less scary to kids, but most people don't think it worked. An atomic bomb cameraman accidentally ripped off his safety goggles a few seconds before the bomb exploded. He immediately covered his eyes with his hands, and when the bomb detonated, he saw the bones of his hands through his closed eyelids just like an X-ray. When the Soviet Union was pushing towards Berlin during World War II, a Nazi SS soldier was forced to play piano for his captors. They made it clear to him in sign language that he would be executed the moment he stopped playing. He played for 22 straight hours, after which he collapsed in tears. They congratulated him, then shot him. One of the actors in The Exorcist went on to become an actual serial killer. Paul Bateson, who plays a nurse in the film, eventually confessed to the killing and dismembering of 6 gay men in the late 1970s. He was released from prison in 2004. In 2014, a family bought a $1.3 million dream home in Westfield, New Jersey. But they never moved in because they immediately started receiving sinister, threatening letters from someone called The Watcher. He would write messages like, "All of the windows and doors allow me to watch and track you as you move through the house. Have you found what is in the walls yet? I am pleased to know your names now in the name of the young blood you have brought to me." The family has been unsuccessful in their attempts to resell the property. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was shot in West Germany in 1970. Producers for the film had a hard time finding little people to cast as Oompa Loompas since so many of them had been killed by Nazis during the Holocaust. During the Cold War, CIA agents used a secret method of communication based on how their shoelaces were tied. In 2016, a Chinese man realized the object he had been using to cut open walnuts for 25 years was actually a live stick grenade from the Vietnam War. In 2015, 3-year-old Jair Sims was found dead in a park in Maryland while his mother was pushing him on a swing. It is believed that she pushed him on the swing for 45 hours straight, even in the rain. Romisha Sims, who is schizophrenic, had suffered from a psychotic breakdown while playing with her son at the park. By the time she woke up, her son had died as a result of hypothermia and dehydration. She was found legally insane and not criminally responsible for the tragedy of her son. A man walked into a Walmart wearing an employee vest and told the cashier they were wanted in the office. He then helped the remaining customer in line, emptied the cash register, and walked right out with the money. He likely robbed other Walmart locations this exact same way. This weapon is called the Apache revolver. They were used by the French game Les Apaches in the early 1900s. It is the concept of a pepper box revolver, a knuckle duster, and a dual-edged knife all built into one. In one of his interviews, serial killer Richard Ramirez once said, "When I die, I want to be buried with sunglasses on and my hands tied behind my head, so when I deteriorate, I'll be the chillest skeleton in the graveyard." A man from South Africa adopted a hippo after it was rescued from a river. 5 years later, the hippo dragged him into the same river and mauled him to death. Armed with giant canine teeth, hippos kill more people each year than lions, elephants, leopards, buffalo, and rhinos combined. They can run at speeds up to 30 miles per hour despite weighing up to 4,000 pounds. So yeah, don't get a pet hippo. Point Nemo is officially known as the oceanic pole of inaccessibility, aka the point in the ocean that is farthest away from land. It is surrounded by more than 1,000 miles of ocean in every direction. At any given time, the closest humans to this point are most likely to be astronauts. This Pleistocene wolf is so well preserved that it looks like it could still be snarling today. It was found in Siberian permafrost, in the spot that it likely died some 40,000 years ago. This 2,000-year-old Roman bathhouse found in Algeria is still in use today. This is a sample of amber containing the bone, tissue, and feathers of a coelurosaur from the Cretaceous period. Researchers believe that this has the potential to be the most conclusive evidence so far that dinosaurs were feathered. A 45-year-old woman named Christine Barnett adopted a 6-year-old girl in 2010. The woman was recently charged with abandoning her daughter in Indiana and fleeing to Canada back in 2013. However, Barnett claims that her daughter is actually a 22-year-old sociopath with dwarfism who is pretending to be a child. She also claims that the girl has attempted to kill her on multiple occasions. She says the girl has tried to push her into an electric fence, has poured bleach into her coffee, and has threatened to stab her in her sleep. The woman claims that the adoption was a scam and that the girl was actually born in 1989. This is an incredible photo of an orangutan using a spear-like item to catch fish. According to many scientists, orangutans are entering their own Stone Age, meaning they're beginning to discover the use of basic tools. The vision of the pronghorn antelope is comparable to a human wearing wide-angle 10 times power binoculars. In other words, on a clear night, they can see the rings of Saturn. The great patu is an extremely rare tree-dwelling bird from tropical America. The bird is known for its eerie nocturnal cries and its stump-like appearance, making it a spooky master of disguise. Not to mention, it looks like an alien bird. Something must have gone extremely wrong with the DNA of this octopus that was found with 85 tentacles in Japan. Snowflake was an albino gorilla that used to live at Barcelona Zoo in Spain. Sadly, he was euthanized in 2003 after being diagnosed with a rare form of skin cancer, likely as a result of his condition. He was the world's only known albino gorilla. Ulnar dymelia, aka mirror hand, is an extremely rare developmental condition of the hand. It is characterized by the absence of the radius, duplication of the ulna, and symmetrical polydactyly, aka 7 or 8 fingers and no thumb. Less than 75 confirmed cases have been reported in medical literature to date. North Sentinel Island in the Bay of Bengal is where a tribe has remained isolated from the outside world for around 60,000 years, ever since the island broke off from Asia. Officials in India made it against the law to travel within 5 miles of the island to prevent the Sentinelese from being wiped out by diseases that their immune systems haven't yet adapted to. But this hasn't stopped people from trying, as the tribe of a few hundred or so has killed multiple explorers and members of crews over the years. In 2018, an American missionary planned on preaching Christianity to the Sentinelese, so he illegally traveled to the island. Believing that God would protect him from the violent tribespeople, his fate was met when an arrow pierced through his heart before he was even able to step foot on land.
I'll get you a hot drink, mate.
Some dry clothing.
Just wasn't working the Jesus.
During World War II, Nazi SS units carried out one of the regime's most disturbing programs, the mass kidnapping of up to 200,000 Polish children for forced Germanization. After being taken from their families, the children were sent to SS-run children's education camps, where they were subjected to horrific racial selection exams. SS doctors measured their skulls, noses, eye colors, and body proportions, trying to determine whether each child looked Aryan enough to be turned into a German. If a child passed the test, they were renamed, stripped of their identity, and adopted into German families as if they'd never been Polish at all. But if they failed, their fate was much darker. Many were transported to concentration camps, where countless children died from starvation, disease, abuse, or execution. Only an estimated 10 to 15% of the kidnapped children were ever found and returned to Poland after the war. At the Nuremberg trials, the Allies confirmed the program a form of genocide, the deliberate attempt to erase an entire population by stealing and remaking their children. An elementary school outing in British Columbia turned into absolute chaos on November 20th, 2025, when a grizzly bear suddenly charged a group of 4th and 5th graders from a wall to school as they paused on a riverside trail. 11 people were injured during the attack, including 2 children who were rushed to the hospital in critical condition, while 7 others were treated at the scene. Teachers fought the bear off with bear spray and a bear banger, likely preventing multiple deaths. The bear soon escaped back into the forest and has still not been found, and officials say they don't know what triggered the attack or whether the animal will strike again. What's especially unsettling is that the attack happened to a group large enough that grizzlies normally avoid entirely, suggesting something was deeply wrong with the monstrous animal. And until conservation officers track it down, the entire valley remains on edge, knowing an injured and unpredictable grizzly bear is still lurking somewhere in the shadows. Did we cross a minute yet? We did. We did? Okay. So, why are we still going? So if you haven't been following, 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez went missing in August of 2025, and after several weeks with no sightings, her body was discovered on September 8th inside the front trunk of an abandoned Tesla registered to musician David in the Hollywood Hills. She was wrapped in plastic, dismembered, severely decomposed, and the medical examiner couldn't immediately determine how she died or how long she'd been dead. Now the newest details reveal that her remains had actually been frozen before being placed in the car, and that's a major problem for investigators. Freezing and thawing a body destroys bruising, masks injuries, washes away blood patterns, and can literally erase the signs that tell examiners whether someone was beaten, stabbed, strangled, or died another way. After the body was frozen, it then sat in the Tesla for 2 to 4 weeks, thawing and decomposing while wiping out whatever forensic clues were left. David hasn't cooperated and remains a suspect but still hasn't been arrested yet because the autopsy is incomplete and prosecutors can't file major charges until the cause of death is confirmed. The freezing detail is why investigators are now struggling to determine when she died, what was done to her, and who handled her body in the weeks she was missing. David's upcoming tour dates, album promo, and public appearances have all been canceled as the case remains under investigation. In 2020, Megan Thee Stallion survived an attack that left her bleeding in the street, shot in both of her feet as she tried to walk away from a late-night argument. Bullet fragments tore into the back of her left heel and scattered through the soles of both feet. Injuries so deep that surgeons couldn't remove all the shrapnel, and pieces are still lodged inside her body. The man she identified as the shooter was later convicted and sentenced, but Megan has said the worst part wasn't the pain. It was being viciously mocked online by people who insisted she was lying, exaggerating, or milking the incident while she was recovering from gunshot wounds. In 1910 Los Angeles, a woman named Miss Bell had been searching for her missing Scotch Terrier for weeks when her friend G.E. Seawright stumbled upon the answer by pure nightmare coincidence. The man was having a hot dog for lunch when he suddenly bit down on something hard, a small metal object hidden deep inside his meal. When he fished it out and wiped it clean, he immediately froze. Stamped on the metal was the identification number of Miss Bell's missing dog. Only then did he realize the horrific truth. The dog had somehow been cooked into the meat of a local hot dog stand. In 2017, 22-year-old YouTuber Pedro Ruiz III tried to film a stunt where a hardcover encyclopedia would stop a .50 caliber round from a Desert Eagle. He had already tested the trick once before with a smaller gun, giving him the confidence to try it again, this time asking his pregnant girlfriend Mona Lisa Perez to fire from just a foot away. But the .50 cal round tore straight through the encyclopedia and into his chest, killing him instantly as 2 cameras recorded the stunt and their 3-year-old daughter stood nearby. Family members later said they'd warned him these viral stunts would get him killed. Perez pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 180 days in jail, and their unborn son was later named after Pedro. In Tampa, Florida, a long-lost cemetery quietly vanished from records for nearly a century, until a local newspaper traced old land deeds and realized a public housing complex had been built directly on top of it. When archaeologists scanned the ground with radar, they found over 100 graves still buried under the apartment complex in perfectly neat rows. The housing authority later confirmed they wouldn't disturb the bodies. Instead, they began relocating residents and announced plans to turn the land into a memorial park for the forgotten dead. This man swore he discovered the secrets of the pyramids and then built something that shouldn't be possible. Coral Castle in Homestead, Florida is a massive stone structure built single-handedly by Latvian immigrant Edward Leeds Skalman between 1923 and 1951, using more than 1,100 tons or 2.5 million pounds of oolitic limestone. Ed stood barely 5 feet tall and weighed about 100 pounds, but managed to carve, lift, and position multi-ton blocks entirely on his own, often at night and without witnesses, sparking decades of speculation about how he moved such massive stones without any machinery. Visitors swear the site feels engineered with impossible precision. One of its stone gates, weighing over 8 tons, can spin freely with the push of a finger. Ed always claimed he had discovered the secrets of the pyramids, but never explained his methods, leaving behind perfectly balanced stone doors, astronomically aligned carvings, and walls heavier than cars. Coral Castle remains one of America's most mysterious handmade monuments, built out of obsessive heartbreak after Ed's fiancée canceled their wedding just a day before the ceremony. In 2015, a man dressed as Darth Vader walked into a Swedish high school carrying a sword. Believing it to be some kind of joke, a number of students posed with him for pictures. But after the cameras were put away, he pulled out his sword and suddenly went on a rampage, killing 2 students and injuring several more. David Parker Ray, aka the Toy Box Killer, abducted his victims before drugging them. When they woke up, they replayed a recording in which he would describe the torture that they'd experience over the next 30 days. He is believed to have tortured and killed more than 50 women in his soundproof trailer. In 2005, an Ethiopian girl was being brutally beaten by 7 men when a pride of lions chased them away. They even stayed with her until help arrived. Some experts say the lions might have spared the girl because her crying sounded like the meowing of lion cubs. Other experts suggest that they were just getting ready to eat her when authorities arrived. About 400 million years ago, before trees dominated the landscape, the earth was covered with giant mushrooms. In 1986, an Indian man set a world record by spending 72 hours in a cage with 72 of the world's most venomous snakes. He was seeking to spread awareness that snakes don't bite unless provoked. He came out of the cage unharmed without a single bite. Part 10. This Incan girl was found perfectly preserved at the base of an Argentinian volcano. Her frozen body has been hailed as one of the best preserved Incan mummies ever found, as her hair, skin, and clothes still remain completely intact. She was likely the victim of a religious sacrifice some 500 years ago. This prehistoric fossil depicts a megalodon tooth stuck inside of a whale vertebrae. In 2011, a pair of Swedish treasure hunters detected a strange anomaly at the bottom of the Baltic Sea using sonar. While most scientists claim that it's a natural geological formation, some say the Baltic anomaly is something more mysterious, such as a sunken city or an ancient alien spacecraft. This is a group of teenage kamikaze pilots posing with a cute puppy on the day before their suicide missions, taken in 1945. This is what most of the trenches used during World War I look like today. At 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning, residents in the German town of Limburg woke up to the sound of a sudden blast. The next morning, they found a crater the size of a house in a nearby cornfield. Authorities soon determined that the blast was created by a 500-pound German bomb from World War II that spontaneously detonated. In 1973, the U.S. Army developed an anti-tank grenade by hollowing out a Nerf football and filling it with explosive charges. However, the prototype never made it to the battlefield, since the explosives gave the ball a wild and unpredictable flight. According to the Geneva Conventions, if you play dead to kill an enemy in a war scenario, then you are committing a war crime. During World War II, it was common for soldiers to keep photos of their loved ones under transparent grips on their M1911 pistols. They were known as sweetheart grips. In 1915, convicted Mexican revolutionary Wenceslao Moguel was sentenced to death without a trial. He was shot 9 times by a firing squad, but miraculously survived all 9 bullets. He even survived the coup de grace, one final shot at point-blank range to ensure death. Although in excruciating pain, Moguel waited for his executioners to leave before he fled the scene and made his way to safety. He amazingly lived on for another 60 years, dying at the age of 85. A rare golden possum was found in Australia and named Pikachu for obvious reasons. Its golden yellow fur is the result of a genetic mutation that affects the possum's melanin production. This picture shows invasive coyotes meeting reintroduced wolves for the first time at Yellowstone National Park. In 1997, tree hugger Julia Hill started living in a 1,500-year-old California redwood tree to prevent loggers from cutting it down. She ended up staying there for a total of 738 days, and the tree still stands to this day. In 2016, 13-year-old Abigail Williams and her friend Libby German were hiking on a trail in Indiana when they disappeared. A search team was sent out for them, and their bodies were found the very next day. The last known photo of Abigail, as well as photos of an unidentified man, were found on Libby's phone. There was also an audio clip of presumably the same man saying the phrase, "down the hill." No arrests have been made so far, but law enforcement has assured locals that the case has not yet gone cold.